kita kena manage the majikan. Make sure the majikan actually complies with the obligation to do the withdrawal and then to carum dengan EPF, and dia pun honor dia punya obligation lah, fit the element. Now my guys have to go out and tackle this group. Kedua, in this group dia voluntary kan, so they need to understand that dia kena nak mencarum, nak menabung, yeah, and in that process. So getting them to be convinced and getting it on a scheme is a big challenge for Cik Ali and his team. The third is for us to make it easy for it. Maybe I ask Cik Ali to add a little bit on how he's making things easy for the ahli to be able to put money back into the system. Can I get a mic for Cik Ali? Dah.
Thank you, Dr. Sri. So basically, one of the things I think you mentioned earlier that we actually have enhanced our app to allow our members to actually voluntarily contribute through our app itself, through FPX. So you can choose any options at the minimum of 10 ringgit, but up to the limit of 6,000. Of course, you need to do based on your limit in your respective banking scheme. But that's one of the ways that we have actually allowed our members to actually contribute within our scheme. And Alhamdulillah, for last year, we have managed to obtain, just from that app alone, close to 400 million ringgit, just from the app alone. And it has increased our voluntary contribution from about 2.8, 2.9 to about 4.1, 4.2 billion. That's one of the things that we have done. What other things that we have actually do is basically, we've also encouraged our banks, Bank to You and so on and so forth, to actually contribute through online, because some of these banks actually allow standing instruction being done through EPF. Hence why we can ensure consistency of contributions to the scheme, and that's the things that we have done. Thank you.
Those are benda-benda yang we feel are in our control. We can go out, we can do, we can execute, but requires us also to change the approach for our team, train them to be able to do these sort of things as opposed to service only in the physical area. You'll be seeing us also increasing our mobile teams this year, and we'll be announcing it later part of this year, where the assets become more like a mobile cawangan that goes out, particularly untuk kita tuju kepada area-area yang kita rasa underserved lah, terutama Sabah dengan Sarawak, where mungkin ada orang tu tak tahu, tak ada banyak interaksi dengan KWSP, so we go to them. We don't ask them to come all the way out to us, yeah, and make it easy for them lah. So those are the simple things that we can do, but a lot of hard work to get it activated. The second one will be things that we want to do from a re-scheme design. I put it in one of the slides also. So we are looking at how to enhance the scheme to make it better in terms of relevancy of the account structure and so on. And also, nak tengok ada pockets of society which are tertinggal. And for us, society yang tertinggal mungkin dia memang dah bekerja, yeah. But because there's a clause in the act that makes it difficult for us to create mandatory deduction, maybe kita kena tengoklah to change the act to facilitate so that we get better coverage lah, and wider coverage. The third is maybe induce changes in our scheme so that there are natural incentives in the scheme, so that the people can personally want to do more, because they are encouraged through incentives that we are working in kerajaan to the ISARAN scheme, for example. So there is a secondary incentive. Dia menabung, kerajaan memberi insentif kalau dia menabung. So those things actually facilitate changes in our scheme. So it's twofold. The ones that we can activate, tak payah tukar kaedah, tak payah tukar akta, we will push and do. With the focus untuk meninggikan liputan, to increase also the focus of adequacy into the system. The ones that need scheme in terms of fixing it, and then getting the appropriate approval lah. The ones that need to get minister approval, kita kena. Kalau masuk akta changes, we have to go through the process to get it changed. But suffice to say, daripada segi EPF, kita memang ada banyak cadangan yang kita akan kemukakan untuk memperbaiki skim yang kita ada. Ada soalan belakang.
Assalamualaikum, saya Hazwan dari Berita Harian. Saya nak bertanya tentang simpanan syariah. Seperti yang dikatakan tadi, simpanan syariah bermula tahun depan 2024 akan diasingkan sepenuhnya. Soalan saya berkenaan dengan pulangan. Seperti yang kita tahu, sejak skim ni mula diperkenalkan pada 2017, terdapat perbezaan lah pulangan antara syariah dengan konvensional. Dengan yang terkini tahun 2022 ni yang paling tertinggi lah, beza dia 0.6%. So soalan saya, adakah selepas tahun 2024 kita boleh menjangkakan pulangan untuk skim simpanan syariah ni sekurang-kurangnya kompetitif dengan konvensional, ataupun perbezaan tu tak berapa jauh lah, 0.1 ke 0.2? Terima kasih.
Seperti saya ceritakan tadi kan, kita telah launch kita punya skim syariah 2017. Ya, dalam proses kita membuka skim syariah, kita juga mencari jalan agar ada banyak lagi instrumen-instrumen yang kita boleh pakai yang diklasifikasikan syariah compliant lah. Lagi banyak instrumen, lagi banyak opportunity untuk kita memilih, lebih banyak peluang yang kita boleh mencari untuk meninggikan pulangan yang ada. Ya, seperti Malaysia memang terkenal sebagai satu Islamic financing center in the world lah. Kalau macam dari segi sukup memang banyak yang ada dekat Malaysia, penerbitan sukup pun banyak. Tapi mungkin ada aset-aset yang belum dapat diklasifikasikan sebagai syariah. Kita kena tengok macam mana nak masukkan ke dalamnya. Kedua, seperti saya ceritakan tadi juga, kalau daripada segi pulangan, bukan saja pulangan kita dapat daripada Malaysia, kita juga harus tengok macam mana nak membesarkan lagi liputan daripada segi luar negara juga. Ya, kalau kita boleh klasifikasikan aset-aset yang ada dalam sektor equity ke, sektor equity persendirian ke sebagai syariah, lebih banyak peluang untuk kita meninggikan lagi apa yang kita dapatlah. Jadi pemisahan skim syariah daripada skim konvensional bukan kerana apa yang dalam skim syariah itu tak halal, tapi kerana dia ada overall control yang mengatakan bahawa EPF maksimum kita boleh bubuh dalam fixed income adalah X. Maksimum kita bubuh dalam equity adalah Y. Ya. Jadi kalau saya nak labur lebih pada sebelah lagi, dia ada had. Tapi bila kita pecahkan, ya, kita boleh letak had limit yang lain untuk kedua-dua, dan peluang kita untuk membedakan pulangan lebih lagi. Jadi saya rasa kalau kita boleh buat macam tu, kemungkinan kita boleh meninggikan pulangan ada. Tapi kita harus ingat yang pulangan tu bukan datang daripada skim design saja. Dia datang juga daripada apakah kondisi ekonomi yang ada. Kalau stock market naik banyak, pulangan keseluruhan mungkin naiklah. Tapi kalau macam tahun lalu, stock market semua tak perform, kita kena menangani isunya. Jadi daripada segi portfolio, kita kena pandai. Kita kena balance portfolio. Jadi kalau yang ni turun, yang lagi bertahan, dan kita boleh stable design. So dari segi apa yang EP nak buat, kita dah buat banyak aktiviti untuk identify macam mana nak memisahkan aset dia, macam mana nak menguruskan asetnya selepas dipesahkan, macam mana nak account the returns bila dipisahkan melalui cara sistem-sistem yang ada, dan juga kita dah membuka cara-cara lain yang mana kita boleh meningkatkan lagi aset-aset yang boleh diklasifikasikan sebagai syariah dengan sokongan Syariah Advisory Council yang kita adalah, yang betul-betul syariah je kita boleh masuklah. Kita tak boleh kata yang tu sebelum ni tak syariah, tiba-tiba overnight boleh jadi syariah kan. Dia kena ikut peraturan yang ada. Jadi itulah yang kita berharap yang kita dapat buat, bagi can untuk kita pecahkan, asingkan asset allocation mechanism yang ada, dan kita perkenalkan lebih banyak aset yang boleh masuk dalam skim syariah. Jadi pengurus dana yang ada tu mungkin ada lebih peluang untuk meningkatkan peluang lebih. Mungkin Puan Roy nak tambah lagi?
Jadi apa ni? Ya, so plan ialah untuk memisahkan SKSS tu, ya, simpanan syariah, simpanan konvensional tu bermula 1 Januari 2024 lah. Jadi again, kalau tengok slide tadi, kita boleh optimiskan pulangan dengan asset allocation. Jadi kalau sekarang ni kita tengok allocation untuk private equity tinggi kan, you can see just now maybe double digit return. I think kita masukkan lagi lebih banyak lagi syariah compliant private equity. So tu semua tengah dalam progress lah EPF. So insyaallah lah tinggal jawapan tu, insyaallah lah boleh optimalkan lagi pulangan syariah.
Datuk Seri Najib Esrawani. Saya ada 2 soalan. Satu adalah 5.35 dengan 4.75 would be a prudent number lah. Tapi based on the performance tu, berapa the actual number yang KWSP actually can give out? Normally ada kan the highest number that you can give out, tapi prudent that you put at 5.35 if not mistaken. Is that the case?
Pasal ada mas saya tak dengar betul-betul tadi.
Tak. Maaf. Based on performance this year, berapa the actual number that KWSP can give in terms of dividend, both syariah and conventional? Because 5.35 is the prudent number kan? And the other question would be di syariah punya ni dia mesti open untuk yang konvensional berpindah ke atau macam?
Okay. Saya mungkin ada salah faham daripada setengah orang yang tak mungkin faham cara mana KWSP mengurus pulangan melalui dividen. Daripada segi KWSP, apa-apa pulangan yang kita dapat direalisasikan tahun tu, kita terpaksa kena declare sebagai dividen. Kalau saya untung 1 bilion lah saya kena pulangkan kepada ahli. Saya tak ada konsep untuk simpan reserve. Ya, kita buat cara macam itu kerana kadang-kadang ahli kita akan bersara lain-lain masa kan. Jadi kalau saya kata okeylah tahun ni saya dah dapat untung 1 bilion, kita simpan 500 juta, ya. Tapi ahli yang bersara tiba-tiba tak dapat. Pasal dia dah bersara, dia dah keluar pada skim kan. Duit dia kalau dah book loss semua kan. Jadi kita rasa mungkin tak fair lah pada orang tu. Jadi yang peraturan yang kita ada dalam EPF, apa-apa keuntungan yang direalisasikan kita pulangkan. Jadi kalau kita tengok dari segi dividen yang diberi kepada skim syariah ke, skim konvensional ke, apa yang ada tu adalah kesemua pulangan yang kita dapat tahun lalu. Jadi tak ada reserving policy dalam EPF lah. Ya. Untuk ahli yang nak memindah daripada skim konvensional ke skim syariah, dia boleh mengikut proses yang kita ada, dan insya-Allah tahun depan semasa kita buat penukaran atau penambahbaikan skim, kita akan cadangkan macam mana nak mempercepatkan lagi the transference process lah. Masa sekarang kalau kita elect nak masuk skim syariah tahun ni, katalah bulan Mac saya elect, saya tak dapat masuk sampai tahun depan. Ya, jadi ada masa yang panjang lah. Ya, jadi kita nak tengok macam mana nak bagi inilah. Saya rasa juga kalau orang tu memilih kadang-kadang skim syariah ataupun skim konvensional, dia bukan saja tengok dalam cara pulangan. Pasal dia pun kena mengira daripada segi dia ikut macam mana ikut moral code dia lah. Dia kata saya nak ikut secara sunnah yang betul. Saya rasa saya nak semua pulangan yang saya dapat halal. Dan dia letak dalam skim syariah. Ya. Dan kalau kita letak dalam skim syariah pun kita tak payah nak mempercucikan. Tapi kalau kita ikut kita cara Islam yang betul, kalau kita tak konvensional, kita terpaksa mempercucikan, kemungkinan ada pulangan yang dapat dalam konvensional tu bukan syariah compliant. Jadi kalau kita kira perbezaan dalam konvensional dengan syariah, penyucian tu mungkin lebih daripada pulangan yang kita dapat daripada syariah lah. So lebih baik masuk dalam skim syariah pada kita ambil skim konvensional lepas tu cuci lagi in that process lah. Jadi ini kita biar kepada ahli untuk menentukan lah apakah pegangan dia, cara mana dia buat, kita memberi opportunity untuk dia memilih mengikut apa yang dia nak buat. I think that's the obligation of EPF lah kan. Puan Roy nak tambah?
I think jadi tadi soalan mengenai apakah actual income for Syariah dengan conventional. So Syariah is 6.8 billion and conventional about 48 billion lah from the 55 tadi in total income.
Hi again.
Sorry.
So I just want to address your. I mean, this was actually quite glaring for me in the fact that when you put up the charts just now, your assets under management, your gross income, your gross investment income, as well as even the dividends that we are getting, I'm actually seeing a decline. I just was wondering if you might want to address that. I mean, 1.003 trillion is still quite a big number, but it's a decline from the previous one. And then it's a 20% discount, 20% decline from your GIV from the previous year. I just wondering if you could just address the fact that how the unusual withdrawals might have impacted these performances. Also, just a quick one. You showed a chart that showed that Malaysia's FBM KLCI has been pretty much underperforming since 2015. That's close to 10 years now. Does that change your strategy in sense of, are you going to continue investing here, or how does it work? Thank you.
Okay. If you look at the net number that we showed just now, okay? Contributions minus withdrawals, including special withdrawal, we were in a net negative position of 3 billion lah, because the withdrawal lebih besar pada contribution yang masuk. At the same time kita ada pulangan, yeah, and part of the pulangan kita dapat income for the year. We also practice prudent valuation based on accounting standards, kan? Yeah. Therefore, it's mark to market. Yeah. That is not realized method, but we just incorporated it into how we classify assets under management, lah, kan? So therefore, it adjusts for both value lah. The most important thing that is different, I think, daripada EPF pada maybe some other funds, yeah. EPF has the strength that we look at things in a very long term. So today, for example, kalau I invest in an asset yang mungkin the current market value kurang sikit, yeah, tapi we have time to wait because our portfolio of withdrawals are very, very long in that period. So it allows the asset to catch up along the scheme. A lot of funds are very tight in the short-term period, and at the period of maturity, they cannot materialize. So I think that's the value of having a pension fund mechanism along the way. And because kita punya asset allocation was robust in keeping fixed income, equity net, we were able to take the balancing amount. Yeah. So even market drop quite significantly, kita punya returns were still quite stable. If you look at KLCI, yeah, KLCI is a mix of a lot of companies inside it. Yeah. And we are a material investor dalam KLCI. Plus or minus 16-17% of market value of KLCI is owned by EPF. So the key what we've been doing over the years is when we are concerned that the period may be a bit flattish and there's not enough opportunities to make capital gain, we can go defensive in the future. So when we go defensive, then we count on a good return coming in from dividend flows coming back. And if you look at last year, not all sectors in KLCI were underperforming. Yeah, the banks did well, the plantations did well, the oil and gas sectors did well. So we have the capacity within our fund management system to overweight segments that we like. So I think that vagrance will always occur in a maturing or a reasonably sized bursa. The key is for us to actually play whether we overweight or we underweight, whether we go defensive or we go growth. yeah, in order to enhance return. So we believe that KLCI still has potential. There are still good yielding assets that we can look inside. We hope KLCI will grow. We hope a lot more good companies will come in and list into KLCI because there are a lot of institutions dekat Malaysia ni yang ada banyak duit. Yeah. And if they were to fundraise and put it in, the investing public has the capacity to sambut. Yeah. But what we need is more vibrancy coming in, more listings coming in, and more quality earnings coming in so that it can lift that. But EPF will not be reducing its commitment into KLCI. We need to manage within the constraints of how much of the portfolio we've deployed to pick the right sectors and to move whether defense, growth, right, or whatever it is that we want to do. You want to add more?
So I think the question was also, the AUM today, there's not much different last year and this year, but why income is much lower is definitely the performance of the market. So what you saw last year was that both fixed income and equity dropped significantly, where all these years, you always have a cycle. This year is a fixed income year or this year is an equity year, so you always have the buffer. But last year we've not seen this unprecedented. It's a global financial market actually had extreme massive losses. And if you can see, big funds like CalPERS, like, what do you call that? Norwegian funds, they all are suffering big, massive losses. So because of that, income obviously will be impacted. Yeah.
Maybe any last questions?
Yes.
Ada satu kat belakang tu, and then another one here.
Just want to clarify on your earlier you mentioned on the AUM, right?
Sorry, can you speak a bit
the
louder?
AUM that you mentioned. I want to know that if this first drops since its inception in 1985 for the AUM, I want to know, is it the first drop since 1985?
First, I think.
Yeah, and also wondering that can you please explain that what are the factors besides withdrawals that has affected on the decline in AUMs? And wonder if the trends will continue because you mentioned there will be still a challenging investment climate in the short and medium terms. And perhaps you could have more explanations on what are the challenges that you foresee already for the short and medium terms, and how will this affecting your investment strategy for this year? Yep. Okay, that's all for me. Thanks.
Because there's a long series of questions, so if I forget, please ask me again. Yeah. Yes, this is the first year that we saw a drop in AUM. Yeah, it was a marginal drop, tapi it dropped. A few reasons. One, we said it was a withdrawal. We showed you the numbers of the withdrawal and so on. Second, as Puan Rohaya said, that markets were bad. Yeah? So when markets are bad, if you mark to market and we keep that in that number, then it will adjust the AUM to reflect that number. But it's unrealized. And we've historically always seen markets also climb back again. And because we are fund, we're not forced to liquidate anything. So we ride the long-term curve. So to be honest, I'm not overly stressed about those sort of vagrances. But what we need to look at is, can we generate adequate returns in the year for our member? So that focus of generation is important. Kalau kita nak generate that return, where do we place the asset? That's where the asset allocation becomes very, very important. So as I mentioned to you just now, the world is still in a very choppy space. The central banks are still very, very worried about inflation. Yeah, and if you look at what the Fed has been talking about, they're still trying to push towards 2%. Yeah, whether they'll get there or not, we'll see. Or whether they change that target, we'll see. But there's a lot of desire to help manage inflation downwards because the inflation has a very negative effect to the rakyat because cost effects, so they want to curtail it down. There is a cost to that drive. So kadang-kadang in the process of controlling inflation, and driving interest rates up, you kill the economy. You push it towards recession. So when central banks are in that mode today, it becomes a very choppy market lah. So just give you an example lah. Towards the end of last year, the market was very convinced that because all the indicators that they were seeing in the US was pointing favorably. Inflation rates were coming down, job numbers were not getting worse, and so on. So the overheating economy was not a challenge. So the market was saying, okay lah, the Fed is going to pivot. They're going to pivot daripada naikkan rate, turunkan rate. Yeah, and in that scenario, the fixed income market could be a nice play. Yeah, so the assets that we pick up, masa the rates were going up, that were yielding, would have been a good asset that we can capitalize with a return. But because the environment is still uncertain, and we saw earlier this year, the numbers didn't come down fast enough. The Fed is still not sure yet. So they're still holding on the basis of. What we will have to do is actually look, okay, in this process, we buy on dips, and when the market jumps, we trade out. Yeah? And to some extent, that's not so bad though, because in a 2.5 months period, they moved from a pivot to no, Fed is going to tighten. And when they moved, there was opportunity to do things lah. So EPF has been doing that lah. It's been looking at bila the rate drop balik because the market overconfident, kita jual because we bought the fixed income at a higher yielding. Bila it's dropped below now, we say, okay, good opportunity, let's buy. Because we can take the portfolio in a longer term horizon. That's the value of EPF lah. The second thing is the ability for us to analyze which sector we want to overweight a little bit or underweight a little bit, because not all sectors move at the same time. Yeah, last year we actually swung quite a bit in the earlier part of the year into financials, because we saw the potential of rising interest rate. So banks will do well, and then as the rates all started to go up, we wanted to generate income, we let go of the shares. This year we saw at the beginning of the year the market reverse. Yeah, we started to collect back again. Yeah, so EPF has got that flexibility to swing and to make that so that we can generate income, at the same time buy and build the portfolio at the right cost. Which is why sometimes we also take write-downs. We didn't sell the shares. The shares are still with us, but we prudently adjust the value of the book. Yeah, so that we don't overstate what we've got in the book. But when the market improves, we have the ability also then to sell accordingly. Yeah, so there are a lot of tacticals that you can do during this period, but it does mean that we need to monitor probably much more than we used to be, because the rate of that change is very fast, and the whole world is very uncertain. Today pivot, tomorrow no. Today everything okay between China and US, tomorrow they fight. Yeah, then when they fight, then everybody panic and certain things happen lah. So the ability for us to move is very, very important. However, our asset allocation was designed with a specific risk tolerance level lah. So while I can move a bit overweight here, underweight here, take opportunity this, I cannot move this way. Because if I do that, I will swing the risk tolerance quite dramatically, and it will kill the potential of stability in the portfolio lah. So that's good, because it makes sure that I'm honest lah. The people cannot go play in the portfolio because there are guardrails that stop the portfolio becoming over risky in that side. So for us, we must monitor tightly. We must take opportunities when they come, but we must contain and manage within the guardrails.
So I think we are guided by our asset allocation. That's very fundamental. As you can see, we have a very stringent asset allocation. So we are guided by that for our mid to long term. At the same time, we keep to fundamentals. Companies that has got good fundamentals, good return, dividend-paying stocks. So these are all companies that we continue to have in our universe. So in terms of strategy, there's not much change in strategy, because as I said, we are long-term, and that's important for us to keep to that discipline. Yeah. There was a question here first. I could go back to you.
Ada mic kat sini? So I'll take the question here. I'll go to you, then last we'll finish there.
Thank you so much. Two questions actually. First thing is that it's regarding about the separation of the Sharia and conventional investments. I guess this means that both will have their own dedicated SAA, but does it mean also that both will have their own dedicated, a separate investment team as well, or one team managing both portfolio? Number two is that I noticed that your investment in infrastructure and real estate has increased over the years. I think a couple of years ago it's about 5% of location. Today it's about 7%. So do you see more further room for improvement in this area? And what about private equity? Will you be increasing your exposure in this area as well? Thank you.
Okay. I'll let Puan Rohaya answer that with very tactical questions on that.
Okay. So your first question regarding the investment team. So I think there's two ways of doing it. Whether we have a separate team or we have a central team that looks into each asset location. We're still looking at the best possible way how we structure the team lah. Yeah, so that we've not come to a landing on that. The question number two regarding your real estate and PE.
Infra.
So if you can see, return from real estate and PE are quite attractive. PE, yes, last year returned about 12% ROI. So it definitely is a very good asset class that we will continue to invest. And we are also very cautious that at the moment, Sharia private equity is not a lot in the market. So we're trying to structure to see whether we can have more Sharia assets in private equity, real estate, and infrastructure. Yes, the answer is yes. We want to grow that asset.
No. Whether you curtail
so there's
fixed income
tactical.
equity.
We work on the tactical. So obviously, you're right. One was a trade-off, one up, one down. So there's also a tactical on say public equities or even what do you call that, fixed income. So that's the balancing we do. So I cannot tell you how much we're going to go more. We have to see how the balance works. Yeah, but it is definitely an asset we like to grow.
I think overall, within the risk framework, directionally, I think we do want to increase our private markets lah. Yeah, directionally. Yeah. Which segments that we will have to adjust, we will adjust as we discuss the SAA in detail against the risk profile that we want. One thing to be aware kan, kalau we were to shift our asset allocation by 1%, it's 10 billion. Yeah, radical shifts actually take a lot of deployment capacity lah. So you cannot imagine that EPF will go from 9% into private markets to be 20% in a space of 1 year lah. Impossible lah, because there's just not enough asset to be able to get, and we won't be able to have done enough analysis whether we're comfortable with the risk profile of what we're investing in. So the EPF portfolio will evolve over time. Yeah? But directionally, it will want to do a bit more private markets. We've seen sustainability and growth in the private markets, and we want to go that direction. One other thing I think maybe throughout the whole of last year, we did not come out as strong in the reportings that actually came out. If you look at for EPF, one thing we've been very, very good in all the years that we've done is to try and put the Malaysian market everyone. That's why we outsource to fund managers who are competent, and then they're able to build the financial market. Well, because we want to push directionally the risk profile to a particular way, and we want to activate activities. So among the risk mandates that among the private equity mandates that we put out last year, and you see it was budget speech this year, was that EPF is putting aside to private equity about R1 billion, yeah, to look at opportunities within the growth PE sectors for Malaysia. We think that the growth PE sector in Malaysia is underrepresented now. There is a gap daripada VC ke PE and then from PE to listing status. If we can help fill the gap, do the good analysis, we can help the players in this market to actually get to that growth stage. They will also feed the pipeline ke the KLCI. And that helps us also build a much more stronger engine for KLCI. So in that process, we put out 2 mandates already. We're working on the 3rd mandate and it will get up to a big ringgit that EPF will deploy because we like that private market space. But we need to have good people and good partners who can also help us achieve that goal. So it's important to focus that. We also issued last year $1 billion of PE mandate for global Sharia portfolio because we want to create a pipeline that feeds the Sharia for private markets. Yeah, and that's what EPF does. It creates things that can create the instruments that can actually fit the portfolio that it wants. And I think that's where scale is important. Kalau you're small, it's very hard to do. When you're as big as EPF, we can make, and other people want to follow with us. Sorry. Ada mic?
Hi, Amanda from TV3. I'd just like to ask, how's your approach in really tackling the informal sector to really engage them, especially those 30 below? It's very interesting to note one of the recent statements by DOSM talking about P-hailing, and they are like 30 and below, and it stated that they found out that over 72% of them, they have Perkeso, and only 22% have KWSP. So is it that they are more, I mean, because Perkeso it seems like an insurance scheme per se, right? So are they more less favorable, KWSP is less favorable versus Perkeso? Maybe what's your approach to tackle this mindset?
I'll let Ali pick up this one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sri. So, as you are fully aware that we are mandatory contribution for formal sector, but for informal kita is on a sukarela basis. So, as anything, but Alhamdulillah, what we have done last year, we managed to increase the informal sector coverage from about 300,000 members to close to 550, if I remember correctly. It's a challenge, I'll be very honest. Agak mencabar. And we sometimes have to work with partners. I think Datuk Sri have mentioned yang we actually work with partners like Grab or GoGet and so forth. And we try to tap on their network through their agents and riders untuk menggalakkan all their riders to actually contribute to EPF voluntarily and so forth. These are some of the things that we have done. We also have done things that we may have not done before. I'll give an example. Our team Mersing actually engaged with Persatuan Nelayan. No? How to attract them to actually. We acknowledge that this is a challenge. This is a journey that we have to go through, but it's something that is necessary for the whole of Malaysia. Henceforth, we are embarking on this journey, and inshallah, we try our best to do it.
I think we are aware that there are gaps in our social protection framework. Yeah. So one of the key things that EPF is working with the government is to put together proposals for how to expand social protection network in Malaysia, and what are the things that we need to do to activate it lah. So from an EPF point of view, macam I mentioned tadi kan, there are certain groups within the network today that technically should have already been considered as mandatory. Yeah, maybe people like contract for service, because for all intents and purposes, they bekerja sepenuh masa. Kalau dia bekerja sepenuh masa, technically they should have had protection provided to them. They're not gig-like in that nature. So we need to try and get support to convince so that we can mandatarize that but maybe in a phase basis. Start first with voluntary, get them to register so they make the registration as easy, or we auto-register. Then they have to opt out. Then Cik Ali team will have to go knock the door and get them to, dah ada account, semua dah set up, masuklah sikit. Yeah? Or be very creative dengan cara we convince them. Then as things progress, they dah masuk, we can also start working on a graduated increase of contribution mechanism lah as we move to mandatory. Yeah, so there's a lot of hard work yang kita terpaksa buat, but we need to do it. Which is why I say in Malaysia kita punya coverage is probably one of the biggest thing that we are trying to tackle today along the way. For SOCSO, I think SOCSO does a very important role kat Malaysia. They look after workers who are within the working age. Should anything material happen at that time, they help support during that period. EPF has the next stage of social protection, which actually to prepare people for their retirement age. So the two actually has to work hand in hand to make sure that the coverage net is actually very, very good. So each does differently, yeah, but both actually enhances the social protection scheme in Malaysia. Okay, maybe last question tadi yang kata kat belakang tadi.
We're going to take one last final question. Thank you.
There's a write-down in your listed equity portfolios in 2022 worth 3.43 billion. Is it a accounting standards, or may I know what is the reasons for this? Is it and also the amount, is it concerning for you guys to do that? And the second is on the withdrawals. Do you guys have the analysis in terms of why specifically like these two groups, Buletin and Indian, has more withdrawal in this withdrawal schemes? Do you have any analysis in terms of these things?
Okay. For the first question, I will let Puan Rohaya tackle it. Cik Isham will pick up the second question.
Okay, sorry, can you just repeat that question again? The second one.
In terms of the withdrawal for the two groups, for the Buletin and also the Indians, where you see a huge drops, 70% and 40% drops in their savings, mean savings. Do you have any analysis or explanation on this, showing these tables?
I'm sorry, I just didn't quite get that. Maybe if you remove your mask. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
Not quite clear.
I just want to know any explanations on the chart or table that you show on the withdrawal for the races in terms of the Malays groups and also or in Buletin or the Indians group, where we saw significant drops in their mean savings. So could you please
why that happened?
Yes,
yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Thanks.
Very straightforward. If you look across all four withdrawal facilities, from Ailestari to Aisina to Acitra to Pengeluaran Khas, 3/4 were Buletin. So if you look at the breakdown of who actually withdrew, almost 3/4 of them were basically Buletin. I think it was something like 2/3 were Malay, and the others were the other Buletin. So in terms of who actually withdrew, it's basically Bumi. There was, I think the Malaysian Indian roughly withdrew in line with the proportion to the population, but Chinese was much lower. So essentially it was the Buletin were overrepresented in the withdrawals. Right? So they're the ones who withdrew.
So
correct.
So basically, in effect, the drop of the mean is because the pengeluarans touched the bottom end of the membership lah. And so if they started with 10,000 and the 4 withdrawals allowed them to take up as much as 10,000, they emptied out their account. Yeah. So if people started off with a higher base and the maximum was 10,000, then the effect was not so material lah. So there were two issues lah. Satu, what was the starting base orang tu at? Yeah. The second is, what was the maximum that they withdraw? And both schemes are also lah. And because of that, it goes to where it is lah. All right.
You were asking about the write down. So, so we apply a very prudent management to make sure our portfolio is very healthy. So when the share price hits a 60% down in value, we will write it down. And we'll do it every quarter because we want to make sure that we have to ensure that the portfolio remains healthy over the years. Yeah.